Hello, and a very happy 2024 to each of you. I hope that your year is filled with positivity, pursuit of your purpose and passions, and success when it comes to your goals established, be it big or small. My name is Jacque Bonéy, and I am the owner and lead trainer at Allegiance Canine, which is in Cairo, Tennessee, more so 10 minutes or so from Memphis. First and foremost, I want to give a huge thank you to the Hollywood Feed family for including me in their educational discussions. I remember as a child when Hollywood Feed was one store on Broad Street in Memphis, Tennessee. And now the brand, through their dedication, foresight, and intentionality, has amassed, I believe, 170 plus stores across the U.S., which is a true testament to their customer service, their knowledge, and their passion for the well-being of our pets. So again, thank you Hollywood Feed for this privilege. Today we're going to discuss a topic that's very, very, very important, and that topic is bringing in a new dog or puppy to your home, which will include some do's, some don'ts, and a few tips. So let's set the tone. Holidays are over, and obviously 2024 is upon us. Excitement is still lingering, but reality is beginning to set in. You have a new puppy or dog. Now what? My intent is to help you answer that question with tips and insight on how your dog thinks. So let's jump right in. Based on my 17 years of experience when it comes to dog training, as well as mentorship and being a mentee, in addition to my vow to always be a student of the dog training world, it is my firm belief that training and instruction should start day one. We'll begin with talking about communication as it relates to our dogs. Dogs are not humans and cannot comprehend in the same manner that we do. Therefore, we need to make our words count, because using countless words your dog would never understand diminishes the value of keywords that are important, such as sit, down, come, kennel, the word no, etc. Yes, dogs are smart, but we sometimes give them too much credit, especially early on, and oftentimes it's to their detriment. Having a full conversation tends to be satisfying for humans, but has negative impact on your puppy or dog when it comes to responding to you when needed. With a new puppy or dog, the only words I'm typically going to use are their name and marker words such as yes, good, and no. We'll discuss those words a little bit later on. While your puppy or your dog is a member of your family, you should look at their relationship as a working one, centered around giving and receiving. I often share with my clients that affection, verbal affirmation, treats, and even their dog's food can be used as a paycheck for desired behaviors, be it lifestyle-based or training-based. In order to fully understand that concept, we must first understand the difference between our dogs as pack animals and us as primal beings. One of the first animals that comes to mind when we consider pack animals are wolves. Now, of course, your dog is not a wolf, but they are very much so similar genetically. Within a pack of wolves, there are roles, there's a hierarchy, and that structure helps to keep them productive and also safe. Let's consider your dog, yourself, and others in your household as a pack. Within that pack, if your dog is consistently receiving free love, free affection, free attention, free treats, and free food, do you think that your value will rise or diminish when it comes to that dog? Typically, the answer is that it's going to diminish, because your dog is thinking, well, if I don't have to work for these things, I'm getting them for free anyway, maybe I'm higher in this pack than I thought. Maybe I'm equal to my humans. Or maybe I'm higher up in rank than they are. This should never be the case, because in some instances it could lead to unwanted behaviors, such as resource guarding, food aggression, toy aggression, and other similar behaviors. So if your goal is to have a healthy relationship with your dog, and I'm sure it is for all of you, we want to consider the fact that, again, dogs earning from us equates to their appreciation and often prevents unwanted behaviors from forming because of a lack of respect. Now, humans as primal beings, we kind of see things differently, right? So, as an example, Christmas has passed. May have received a few gifts. Or another example could be if you're out and about and you receive a free compliment. Typically, we're going to be appreciative of those things, although we may not necessarily earned those things. So that is where, in a way, our dog views things one way, and we view things a different way. Dogs being pack animals again, and us being primal human beings. Dogs don't have the same thought process or rationalization in appreciating several freebies, especially if received consistently throughout their life. So that's the reason why, again, we want to make sure that they earn from us to build better habits, better behaviors, and as opposed to us giving, and them taking, we build balance. Now, while we won't be going into specifics when it comes to dog training, I do want to go back to the idea of your dog's name and those marker words. To use, or the use of markers tends to denote that the dog did something correctly or didn't do it correctly. A training tip that I will provide, and that I believe is essential, is to start the relationship building process using your dog's name, using the yes marker, and tying that into them being rewarded with a treat or food given by you. As an example, when I call my dog's name, especially my new dog, when he or she responds to me, I'm going to use the marker word yes, because it denotes that they actually perform the correct action, and I'm going to also give that reward on that yes marker word. I don't use treats a whole lot, unless it's more so for higher distractions. I do believe in using their kibble because it's very plentiful, obviously. They need their daily nutrition, of course. And we want to make sure that we tie those things into them earning and it being a reward versus just freebies long term. So again, for me, in that example, I call my dog's name. Dog looks at me saying, hey, what does that word even mean? And I give them the yes marker word, and I use that food to build consistency, and therefore they grasp and understand that when I hear Fido, or Callie, or whatnot, and I look at my owner, I get rewarded for such. That must be something that's important for me to do each and every time. Dogs are obviously associative learners, so that builds that proper association. As it relates to the two other marker words that I mentioned, the word good and the word no, again, this is more getting in depth when it comes to training, but let's apply it to your dog's name. If I call my dog's name, and I want my dog to focus on me for, let's say, 10 seconds. When they give me that eye contact, I'm going to use the word good, which tells them that you're doing the right thing. And until we get to that 10-second mark, I may use the word good, and then at 10 seconds, I may use the yes word and that reward to say, hey, here is your paycheck for doing the right thing for that 10-second period. So basically, good is going to be a duration marker that eventually leads to the word yes. As far as the word no, I don't really use that word initially because when I first get a puppy or a dog, they don't really understand what I don't want. So in the future, however, when my dog knows his name, I've gone through those reps and they grasp that when they hear Fido, it means look at me. If they don't look at me, I will use that word no, coupled with a small correction, which denotes that that isn't the right behavior, and let's try this again. One thing I wouldn't suggest is using a bunch of command words, the sit, the down, the heel, the come, or similar commands until your dog fully understands those words and what they mean. We want to make sure that when we use those words, they're tied to your puppy having a proper understanding of how to do them correctly and consistently versus them doing them in a manner that's inconsistent us rewarding that, and then them in their mind thinking that, okay, I can do it this way, or varied ways and still get the same result or reward from my owner. So the first few weeks, I probably won't use those words until I have established what they mean through luring and free shaping to build an actual value and understanding behind them. But hopefully we'll have a discussion in the future regarding more in-depth variations of training and those techniques and how to show them, and we'll also demonstrate what they mean and how to use them with your dog. The big takeaway from this concept as of now is that we don't want to name a command until we are satisfied with that dog knowing what it means through, again, the free shaping process or the luring process. And of course, it does take consistency to build that understanding of the behavior prior to us naming it. The next subject that I want to cover is the idea of a schedule. Of course, we want our dogs to be consistently house trained and also kennel trained, but it takes establishing a proper schedule to get to that point. We want to make sure they understand that going outside means, okay, now it's time to relieve yourself versus doing so in the kennel or doing so in your house. We definitely want to make sure that based on that schedule, we can teach them to hold their bladder or their bowels until we are in the appropriate environment, usually outside, and they're able to do so. Now for a puppy, we're going to want to be very consistent with the time that the puppy goes outside. I'm also going to want to be very intentional about, within that schedule, making sure that we have specific feeding times and also specific times to give your dog water. It isn't a negative thing to put them on a schedule as long as we are consistent with making sure that the necessities are pretty much included in that, and that we provide the necessary breaks and the necessary outlets for our dogs to relieve themselves. One thing that I always suggest for our clients is for them to take their busiest day of the week and create that schedule, which does include time in the kennel, outside time to use the restroom, outside time to play and kind of get out that energy, training time, feeding time, and water time. Now, a good rule of thumb for an inside dog is that their water should be based on their body weight. As an easy gauge, I may use a puppy, let's say maybe 12 pounds. I'll then give that puppy typically about 12 to 15 ounces of water, so they kind of equate, and I do break that 12 to 15 ounces up into different times throughout the day. So let's say I may give them water at 7 a.m., then again possibly at 1 or 2 p.m., and that last time perhaps may be around 6 or 7 p.m. I'm very big on that last time being several hours prior to them going to sleep at night in their kennel, because we want to make sure that they have time to relieve themselves a few more instances prior to them having those hours in that kennel overnight while you are sleeping. So we've addressed the water. What about the food? Now, I'm not an advocate for solely using the measurements on the bag of food that you're feeding your dog. We want to make sure that when it comes to a healthy weight, we don't overfeed them, and therefore, as opposed to using those bag measurements, we should perhaps look at the dog's body composition as a determining factor for whether we are feeding too much, too little, or the appropriate amount for our dogs. As a rule of thumb, we want to take the dog's tuck area, which is pretty much their stomach prior to getting to their hind legs, and we want to see a small indentation in that tuck. Now that denotes that we are pretty much on track with feeding according to their size, according to their age, and according to their development. Now on the opposite end, if from that tuck area up to their front legs, we're seeing several ribs, that tends to denote the fact that we aren't feeding enough. We may need to increase the amount of food that we're giving that puppy or that dog. So again, while I don't solely use the suggested measurements on the food bag as a definite gauge, it may be a good benchmark or starting point, But also take into account that your dog has a varied metabolism from, let's say, a bulldog or a shepherd or a Doberman or a Chihuahua. They're going to vary. Also, we want to take into account their energy level. We're going to take into account the type of breed that it is, a working breed or a herding breed or more so a cat potato type breed. Now for me, I'm using their food for training. So I'm going to more often than not put that food in a bag. And at specified times, I'm going to use that food for that name recognition, or for a dog that understands things like come sitting down. I'm going to use that food for those actual training practices. Of course, if you're watching this, you probably look at Hollywood Feed as a good source for quality nutrition for your dog. But we want to make sure that we are feeding the adequate protein and fat ratio. For your larger breed puppies, we don't want to grow them too fast, so we may feed them a lower protein and a lower fat. For your more active breeds, your herding breeds, your working breeds, your Malinois, your Dutch Shepherd, we're going to feed them a little bit more because they're expending more energy and they're burning more calories, and we want to make sure that their intake is appropriate to their output. But you have a great resource at your local Hollywood Feed, because I am aware that the staff and the associates there go through extensive training based on the brands that they carry, so they'll be able to help you when it comes to choosing the food that's right for your dog. Now, whether you've gotten a new puppy or a new dog, another important factor to consider is their pee and poop schedule. Of course, we want to make sure that our dogs are kennel and house trained, but how do we do such? Again, based on that schedule that we create, we want to make sure that our outside time is factored in around our dog's food and water consumption. Early on for our smaller puppies, you want to make sure that they go outside a few minutes after they've eaten their meal or have had water. And we want to create a habit that when they go outside, use the restroom, and exhibit proper behaviors, we want to reward that puppy with that word yes and that treat or a little bit of that kibble. For your older puppies or your adult dogs, we may want to give them a little more time between when they've eaten or drank water prior to going outside. So you want to make sure that even if they have a little bit more time, let's say 30 minutes after eating or drinking water, versus a small puppy waiting maybe say 10 minutes to go outside, we want to make sure that we are still equally consistent with the schedule that we are adhering to for probably the next 30 to 45 days. Now, before you give your puppy or dog full reign of the house, we want to make sure that they understand how to be respectful of smaller spaces first. Our dog's kennel is an important tool for building that respect, because most dogs don't like to be uncomfortable in the kennel if they have used the restroom in it. They have to sit in it or lay in it while you're gone or while they're in there, and that isn't too favorable for them. So we want to make sure that when it comes to kennel training, which is the first step to complete house training, we have a size appropriate kennel that allows your puppy or your dog room to stand, lay down, and turn around, but not so much room that they can use the restroom on one side of the kennel and then are comfortable on the entirely other side of the kennel. That kind of defeats the purpose of kennel training, right? Now, I understand that there are various opinions when it comes to kennel training, or a dog being in the kennel while you are away at the house or for varied reasons. Some individuals feel as though a dog in a kennel is unfair. Others feel as though it's necessary to build that understanding of holding that bladder in those bowels, and also to be respectful in the house in general. I'm pretty much so inclined to go with that second thought process. Kennels aren't tools that are meant to be negative for your dog. As an example, let's say that your dog was out in the real world on its own. I'm pretty sure that your dog is not going to be frolicking around in fields all day, or walking or running miles in the area just because. They're going to want to have a safe, small space to be able to relax and to be able to feel comforted until it's time to go out to find food or to explore, etc. So we as humans sometimes have a negative notion that the kennel is a bad thing, But in a dog sense, if we build the right foundation around the kennel, it can be a positive thing for them because it's a safe zone, it's a place to decompress, it's a place to relax. Therefore, for them, it becomes a positive association. Reasons for kennel training may include creating independence for when you are at home and just giving them time away from you to prevent what's called separation anxiety. Or if you have company over and your dog hasn't gotten fully used to a bunch of social activity around them, that kennel can serve as a place for your dog to decompress. Similar to the example I used of if your dog was out in the wild and wanted that time to decompress, feel safe, feel secure in that small space. And we, of course, use kennels for the purpose of safety when we can't supervise our puppy or our dog, or because you have to work, run errands, etc., and don't want to come home to your house being torn up. We want to make sure that your puppy has a safe and confined area to prevent the unwanted from happening when you aren't able to be in their presence. Now, let's discuss placement of the kennel in your house. Because we do want to use this as a tool for independence, and to prevent separation anxiety or other anxieties, we're not going to want the kennel to be in the main frequented area of the house. If possible, we want to have it away from the most action-filled places of the house. We want to possibly have it in, let's say, a sunroom, or possibly in a laundry room, or even in a guest bedroom. We want to make sure that even if they do whine a little bit, they're not seeing us and then expediting that whining or increasing that whining because they want us to let them out. That again defeats the purpose of kennel training if we're inclined to let them out consistently when they exhibit those behaviors. Now, we want to also make sure that we're building favorable behaviors for your dog coming out of the kennel. If my dog does whine or bark, I'm not going to let them out of the kennel because I don't want to create that association of doing so and them thinking that, okay, if I do this, I get my way. Yes, I understand that, it can be annoying initially, but if your dog does not need to go to the restroom, as in you've already taken them out recently, or don't have a need at that moment, leaving them in that kennel until they quiet down teaches them that, okay, if I am quiet, if I am content, eventually my human is going to come and let me out. Sometimes that takes about 10 minutes, sometimes longer. But hopefully it takes less once they get into the habit of what the kennel represents and what it means for you to let them out. When coming out of the kennel, we are not going to just allow them to burst out disrespectfully or to bombard us. We want to also make sure that they understand that when the door opens, they are to remain in that kennel until we summon them to come out. We use different training tactics with their food, of course, like I mentioned previously, to show them that it's a positive thing to go in the kennel, it's a positive thing to stay in the kennel and wait even with the door open, and it's also a positive thing to come out in a mannerable fashion. Now, let's discuss the idea of exercise and constructive play when it comes to your puppy or your dog. This is more specific to puppies than dogs because of the development of bones, joints, growth plates, etc. We want to use a rule of thumb of 1 month of a puppy's life equates to 5 minutes of strenuous activity that day. So as an example, if a puppy is 8 weeks old, 2 months, we can pretty much give them about 10 minutes of strenuous activity in that day. Now, that does not include going out to use the restroom, doesn't include running around the yard for a couple of minutes, but we don't want to have that dog pounding pavement going for walks or on hard surfaces for too long because we don't want to negatively affect their growth and development. As the puppy gets older, let's say 4 months, they can now exercise strenuously for 20 minutes. At 6 months, we can give them 30 minutes. But we want to keep that rule in place because we don't want to cause any negative impact on their growth and their development at a young age. For our younger puppy, we also don't want to have them on pavement too long or on hard surfaces as a whole for too long. We want to use more grassy areas, and if your house has a rug or carpet, we want to use those more carpeted areas because it provides a little bit of more cushion for them as they're developing. Last but certainly not least, we want to discuss the subject of socialization. It's not what you think it is. It's not what you've been taught to believe. Often when we think of socialization, we think of our dog getting physical attention, pets, rubs, treats, etc., from individuals who aren't in your household. For me, that could not be further from the truth and could pose adverse effects to your dog when it comes to their development and also how they view humans when it comes to life. As opposed to the notion of outside people engaging with your dog for socialization or even the idea of random puppy play, let's consider them being environmentally stable, going out different places, seeing different sights, hearing different sounds, being around different distractions as they are developing and as they're coming into their own. For me, socialization is my puppy going on excursions to Lowe's and Home Depot. They may be in the basket versus walking around with me if they are still in the process of finishing out their vaccinations. But if they've had them and they've completed their actual puppy shots, they may go for a walk beside me as I go and look at light bulbs or go into the garden center. And then for the most part, we're going home. Yes, that seems minute to us as humans, but for your puppy or your dog, this could open a whole new world for them to learn how to adapt to. I'm not worried about a bunch of commands with my puppies, and I'm more so wanting them to be able to develop a comfort and a consistency that wherever he or she goes, that puppy owns that environment, and it more so makes them more comfortable as they develop and as they go to new places. So we want to make sure that we look at socialization for what it is, an overall lifestyle building process so that we have a puppy or dog who is more confident out and about as opposed to one who's more aloof, afraid, or scared of different environments because they've been sheltered at home the entire time. Now again, let's make sure that prior to doing so, the automatic excursions that is, adequate vaccinations have been given to help prevent any kind of sickness, disease, or illness from varied environments. But also let's make sure that in doing so, we get our dogs out and expose them so that they are not afraid, bothered, or turned off by trips to various places or being around different sights and sounds that trigger negative responses versus positive ones. Looking at socialization from the standpoint of dogs playing together. Admittedly, I'll never be a supporter of dog parks because there are too many variables that we can't account for and too many things that could go wrong in those environments. Most of those individuals there aren't necessarily taking into account whether their dog is well trained, well mannered, and aren't taking the time to listen to discussions like this. So to play it safe, to prevent my dog from potentially developing anxiety or reactivity from a bad experience, I just don't do it. Also, some individuals aren't going to necessarily be as consistent with their vaccinations. So a lot of times a dog park environment tends to be more of a detriment to your dog than a good thing. If you have, let's say, a friend or a neighbor that has a puppy or dog that is one, relatively well-mannered, and two, has had all their vaccinations, it's okay to have small puppy play sessions. Now, we don't want to let our dogs play for hours at a time because they kind of forget that we're there, and that should never be something that happens. We may give them a few minutes here to play, then back to us to decompress. Allow it again, then repeat the same thing. But we want to make sure that, again, the dogs that our dogs are interacting with are equally well-mannered and that owners have the same thought process when it comes to their dog's development and their dog's behavior. As it relates to people petting my dogs, I will admit that I'm mostly inclined to decline such because I don't want my dog to feel as though other outside individuals that aren't part of our pack are equally as important as I am. If we allow our dog to get consistent attention from other people, do you think that when they go out in public they're more focused on us? Or are they saying, well, that person's here to see me, that one is too, and that one is too? Pretty much that's going to be the behavior that they establish because of the habit of going out, getting attention, and so forth. We kind of diminish in value, and other things around them in the environment gains value. Also, by doing so, we can create what's called leash reactivity. Our dog is used to getting attention from others. The dog is not allowed to do so, and therefore they begin to bark and whine, and they're reactive because they're not getting their way and they're not getting what they're accustomed to getting. So for me, I don't view it as an unfair thing to tell an individual, no, I'm sorry, you can't pet my dog because he or she is in training. I don't view it as a negative thing to want to make sure that my dog is more attentive to me than what's around them as it relates to other individuals that aren't part of our pack. I don't believe in dogs playing together on leash, especially strange dogs, because again, owners aren't necessarily as consistent as you are in protecting your dog's well-being, and they aren't as knowledgeable of the harm that that could cause. So while it may appear unfair, it's actually doing your dog a service versus a disservice to make sure that they're more focused on us, they're more centered around us, and that we are able to then give them the rewards for doing so. Now, that was a bunch of talking, but I do thank you for taking the time to listen to this discussion. I'm very passionate about proper dog etiquette, proper dog behavior, and making sure that we set our dogs up for success versus failure. Yes, that does hold you as the owner accountable, more accountable sometimes than we want to be. But if we establish these habits early on, we prevent a lot of the negative, unwanted behaviors that result from not being accountable to our dog's well-being, their development, their growth, and their progress. Again, I do want to give a huge thank you for Hollywood Feed for seeing the importance in this discussion and for also including me in this discussion as well. I believe that I may have some question and answer sessions in the near future, and I hope that we will be able to also have more sessions in regards to hands-on training, in regards to how to mitigate certain behaviors, in regards to how to increase certain behaviors, and all around well-being of our dogs or our pack of dogs that may be in our house. So once again, from me to you, from our Allegiance family to the Hollywood Feed family, thank you very much, and again, I appreciate this opportunity.